Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you what is, in my opinion, the best digital DMR radio on the market, and that's the Zastone UV008 version 3. This radio works on analog, but also is Tier 1 and Tier 2 DMR with military-grade encryption, 10 watts, GPS, and has an IP67 rating, so it's fully submersible. Personally, I highly recommend this radio to preppers, but also to professionals such as police officers, search and rescue, coast guard, and even soldiers, because this radio is also capable of doing Satcom. I'm going to explain what that is a bit later in the video, but first I'm going to do the unboxing, see what accessories come inside of the box, go through the menu, and then I'm going to give you some real use case scenarios for it. I'm also going to be leaving links to this radio in the video description and also pinned in the comments. First in the box you have a user manual, and it's in Chinese and also English. You have the radio itself, and it feels quite solid. You also get two antennas, and the longer one is actually a tri-band antenna, even though it's marked as a dual band, and it works quite well on VHF, UHF, and even on Satcom. And the shorter antenna that's dual band. You also get a charging cradle, and it's 12 volts. When I ordered it, I selected the package that comes with a programming cable because this radio has a Motorola type connector, so it won't work with the K-type Bofin cables. You also get the power brick, and it's 12 volts as well. Over here you have the belt clip and also the cover for the audio connector. And you also get a hand strap. And this radio even comes with a battery eliminator for your car, so you can have the radio plugged in constantly and you don't need to worry about charging the battery. And now let's have a look at the radio itself and build that screen protector. Okay, now I'm going to clear the table and we'll have a proper look at the radio and go through the menu. As I mentioned previously, this radio feels really solid, and you can tell it's not a toy simply by looking at the connector, and you'll notice it's a Motorola type connector. For those of you that want to use a 2-pin K-type connector, there is a $6 adapter, and I'm going to be leaving a link in the video description and also pinned in the comments. Now let's have a look at the menu. And currently I'm in analog mode, and first option is FM radio. And that's a Japanese radio station. Next is weather and weather alerts. GPS, and this radio is also capable of transmitting the GPS coordinates through DMR. Also, while in analog mode, this radio is fully programmable from the keypad, so you can save all of your channels and repeaters. However, it's a lot easier to do it when it's connected to a computer. And same with DMR. I think you can select some of the functions, for example encryption, but ideally you'd want to set it from there. And I just signed the menu. It also has mic gain, which is really great. It makes your sound quality sound a lot better when transmitting. And it's the first time I'm using this radio, but from what I can see, you can actually input your DMR frequencies straight from the keypad. And from channel type, you can select the second VFO to be either analog or digital. So at the moment, it's currently showing as two analog VFOs. Once you change it in channel mode, it will become a digital channel, and same for VFOA. This is also fully customizable from the settings. But once you're in digital mode, if you go to the menu, you'll find a few extra options. For example, radio ID. From here, you can customize the side buttons and add different functions. For example, an emergency key, squelch on or off, move the zones up or down, adjust squelch, power, monitor, tuck around, a small call, lone work, and Vox. Also, while you're in digital mode, if you go to a menu, you'll be able to find message. From here, you can type messages and send them to other DMR radios. Over here, you also have quick text where you can program different responses, so you don't need to type them every single time. Inbox list, where you can see your previous messages, outbox, and drafts. Call logs, so you can see your DMR calls. You can also select your encryption mode, and you have the option of ARC4, AES-256, and AES-256M, and that's selectable from the keypad. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to get any video of the receive quality. However, I did test it on airband and also on a UHF repeater, and the quality is excellent. It's way better than a Baofeng, and it sounds just like a Motorola radio. As I mentioned previously, this radio is waterproof and is fully submersible. As you can see in the above video that I borrowed from my life's YouTube channel, the radio was in a bathtub for several minutes and is working just fine. Now let's talk about use case scenarios for this radio. And we're going to start with prepping and why do you want a radio like this? First reason is this radio works in analog, meaning it will work just like your Baofeng. You can input the frequencies directly from the keypad, your repeaters. It works in the airband, ham band, marine band, and depending on your country, you can also listen to your fire department and a lot of other fun frequencies. Second reason is the GPS, waterproof, and the overall build quality of the radio. Third reason is this radio has digital monitor, aka promiscuous mode. With promiscuous mode enabled for any color code and ID in both slots, you should hear traffic from any active talk group, regardless of color code or time slot. So pretty much you input a frequency and you'll be able to hear the transmissions. This comes extremely useful for listening to your fire department, police department, sheriff's department. If they are on DMR and they're unencrypted, you can pretty much hear the entire conversation. Fourth and final reason is, if you rent a business frequency, you'll be able to use encryption. So if you want to communicate with your friends or family, you can do that legally. If you don't rent a business frequency and only have a ham license, you'll still be able to use DMR. And most people with a Baofeng still won't be able to understand what you're saying. Instead, they're going to hear this. And that's what DMR sounds like when people with an analog radio like a Baofeng are listening. Now, the second use case scenario, as I mentioned at the beginning, I would recommend this radio to police officers, Coast Guard, search and rescue, or other government agencies. And I'm going to explain why. If your police department or other government agency isn't using P25 or Tetra, and instead they still have analog radios or even better DMR radios, and for example, you weren't issued your personal radio and you want to have one, then I would highly recommend this radio. And best example I can give you is myself. When I was a police officer and also on the SWAT team, my entire police department was approximately 115 officers and 16 of us were on the SWAT team. And we weren't issued our own personal radios. So each morning we'd come into work, we'd take one of the radios from there, pop in a fresh battery, and we'd use it during our shift. But the problem appeared when we'd be calling from home. Even though I had all of my police gear with me and I would always conceal carry, I would have a radio. And if I wasn't going at the police station first, then I would have to rely on my phone. So back then I ended up getting a PUC-Sync BX888, a really cheap Chinese radio. This was, I think, 2008, before Baofeng. And I programmed our two channels, one of them being a repeater, so I was able to listen from home. And also I had the state police, fire department, ambulance, and also Marine Channel 16, which came in very useful. So now every time when I would go to a call, I would have a radio. And not just that, my police department also was responsible for a nearby river. And we got a lot of poachers there using nets or electricity for fishing. And we did have a police boat, however, we didn't have a radio on it. And I was the only one with a working radio that could transmit on Marine Channel 16, which is the international calling frequency. And this kind of use case scenario also applies to search and rescue. For example, if you're doing body recovery and you don't want people listening in, or if you work for the Coast Guard and you want to have your own personal radio, you can put in all of your 80 Marine channels and also other agencies, because this radio has 1,000 channels and I think at least 10 zones. And it's waterproof, so yeah, highly recommended. And the third use case scenario, like I mentioned at the beginning, soldiers or mercenaries. And for example, let's say you're a mercenary fighting somewhere in Eastern Europe and you want your own personal radio that has waterproofness, GPS, 10 watts, and also encryption. So this way the enemy won't be able to listen in on your communications. Then again, this radio is for you. And I also mentioned soldiers. Soldiers, depending on the country they're from, are either issued analog radios in poorer countries. However, in countries like the US, UK, Australia, Japan, they're issued $15,000 Harris radios. And usually they will use manpacks and a big antenna for Satcom. Now, what is Satcom? Satcom are a few dozen military satellites in geostationary orbit, meaning that they are always in the same spot. And militaries from different countries use them as space repeaters to talk by radio from continent to continent. Some of the newer satellites use higher frequencies, but some of the older ones that use 290 MHz up to 320 MHz are still in use by the US, UK, and a few other countries' militaries. And this Zastone is the best commercial radio on the market capable of Satcom right out of the box, and with a compact antenna, like the long one from the box, or even better, a dipole like this one that I made out of tape measure, and the total cost was around $5. And I use it only for receiving purposes. However, with this type of antenna, Brazilian, Russian, Italian, and Spanish pirates use this radio and a few other models that require some soldering to transmit illegally on over 30 of these satellites.
Я говорю, у нас это итальянский или какой?
259, 259, землячку, ответь.
And this radio is even capable of DMR over Satcom,
8, тест.
including text messages. And usually they're just transmitting stuff like this.
Para virar ali dentro de parte e pronto. Na estrada eu não ando com o eixo levantado. Eu uso.
And now I'll show you a power test, and disclaimer, I didn't film this. Transmitting on these frequencies is illegal. However, if you're a soldier and have the right to use these Satcom satellites, then instead of having to set up the big antenna, you can just use this, or just have it as a backup radio. And if you're a civilian and you're just interested in listening, that's usually legal in most countries. And the best frequency to try is 255.550 MHz. However, you can try putting your antenna south and scan between 250 and 265 MHz. And that was it for this video. And I'll be leaving a link to this radio in the video description and also pinned in the comments. And my next video will be on how to program your radio for prepping or for any SHTF scenario. If you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, drop a comment. And if you want to support my channel, you can also leave a donation on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description. And I'll see you in the next video.